shown. Let's start with you, Sarah, and all these new developments. I think it's a big deal. We have a lot of new information that's been coming out as it relates to Bruce Orr, Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson. Now we see that he had another client, and that was Russia, a Russian client. And now we see that before and after the meeting at Trump Tower, he was meeting before and after with that client that was paying him.
Yes. So here you have people like James, like John Brennan, James Clapper, and others peddling complete and outright lies. These things have not been verified, saying that the Russians have information on Trump, that they can blackmail him, putting out this disinformation, not even misinformation, disinformation. And they're aiding Russia in this chaos. But on the other side, we have insurmountable evidence based on text messages, phone records, documents that, people like Natalia Veselnitskaya, who met at Trump Tower, were working for Prevazon Holdings, and guess who they hired? They hired Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS. So she was connected directly to Glenn Simpson. She met with him before and after, just as you said. There is direct links to these people. And, that is where the actual truth is, Sean. This is the evidence that people are not following, and they need to be following. And this is the reason why Congress and why the senators have been so adamant for calling a special counsel to investigate this. It is a complete injustice. And if you're looking at it on its face, we can see that there was actually a campaign to unseat a duly elected president. And unfortunately...
Exactly. That's what the Avarosa obsession, or the Stormy obsession, or whatever,
exactly.
Or the blank hole obsession, whatever it is happens to be of the day. It's just, crisis peddling, but ignoring the biggest abuse of power and an attempt to literally steal a presidential election. And by the way, everyone seems to not care that we know the fix was in. Bernie never had a shot in the primary. Nobody ever seems to talk about that anymore. If I was a Democrat and I voted for Bernie, or I wanted Bernie to win, I'd be pretty pissed off.
Sean, I've spoken to a number of Democrats that are very angry about that, and they know the election was stolen. That's right.
This is the United States of America still, the last time I checked. All right, we're going to be bouncing back and forth. I want to ask you about Bruce Orr next, Sarah, but first I want to bring David into this. David, look, you've tried a lot of criminal cases here. I've used the example of Sammy the Bull Gravano. Sammy the Bull kills 19 people, but he gets a get-out-of-jail-free card if he testifies against person X, Y, or Z. And I'm thinking, okay, if I killed 19 people, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. I killed people. It's not exactly like I have a moral compass at all. I'd say whatever you want me to say. Now, the lead prosecution witness in the Manafort case is his partner, Rick Gates. He's admitted liar, embezzler, cheat, involved in everything that supposedly Paul Manafort has done for the most part. He is their star witness who was facing 100 years in jail, and everybody else that testified got immunity. That sounds to me like, well, Mueller is basically bribing Rick Gates with a get-out-of-jail-free card. And frankly, I can't put any faith or credibility in anybody that gets off 100 years in jail, potentially.
Right. You've hit the nail on the head. This is the currency in which people like Andrew Weissman and Greg Andres, two lead prosecutors in the Manafort case, for example, have dealt their entire careers. They decide who should be telling the truth in the case, and if the story doesn't match from the informant that they would like it to be, they get rid of that person. They deep six them. If they're willing to play ball and say what Weissman and Andres and those sort of prosecutors want them to say, then they can play ball. But it's a defense lawyer's job to expose that to the jury. So the juror should be as offended as you've indicated you are that a person who commits 19 murders, or in this case, white-collar
crimes. Maybe it comes down to the numbers and the accounting. I don't know. 95% of federal cases end up in guilty verdicts. So the odds are with Mueller.
That's right, but remember, the government has all of the resources. You take a white-collar defendant who's never known anyone who spent a day in jail, and you put before him or her the prospect of going to jail or having a family member go to jail, and people like Weissman and Andres turn the screws to those family members. They plead guilty whether they're guilty or not. The American public may not believe that. It happens every day in our justice system.
But he got a complete get-out-of-jail-free card, and he was facing at least 100 years in jail. I can't put any credibility in what he says. He's an admitted embezzler.
You gave the example of Sammy the Bull. Those are murders. He was out on the street. Time served.
after the Trump Tower meeting. You know, the plot thickens every single day, and it literally is Russia, 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 but it's not what Mueller's doing, Sarah Carter.
Mueller is not investigating all of these Russian connections with these players that were involved in trying to entrap President Trump or people within his campaign. They're continuing this saga, and they haven't shown us any proof that there was any guilt of collusion with the Russians with the campaign. But let's just go to Bruce Orr. We know that Bruce Orr was in communication with Christopher Steele, a former foreign British spy who was basically peddling Russian disinformation into the FBI. Now, when the FBI realized that Christopher Steele was lying to them, that he had been meeting with the media and actually peddling that information for Glenn Simpson, who, remember, also worked for the Russians, to American media, the FBI fired him. But they wanted to continue propagating these lies. So Peter Strzok and the others who were in charge of these investigations went around Christopher Steele. They used Bruce Orr as a back channel. And his wife, Nellie Orr, just happened to be working for who? Glenn Simpson with Fusion GPS. Sean, there cannot be any more connect the dots than what we are seeing. And it's so unfortunate that we do not have a
meetings,
special...
by the way, 60 meetings between Steele and Orr at least.
70 at least. That is what I was told today. 70 at least. Now that they've counted all of the Skype messaging back and forth. And remember, they were using it as a back channel. But what did they fail to do? The government failed. The FBI failed. And the DOJ to put that in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application that they issued on Carter Page.
How is it legally possible, David, that you've got all of this Russian evidence here on the other side, and they ignore it, and they go after a 2005 tax case? Has nothing to do with the election, Russia, the president, nothing. How did that mandate spread so wide by the guy that signed the fourth FISA warrant, which is Rod Rosenstein, which is so conflicting?
It's shocking. It's shocking. Look, let me just say it. Also, in listening in here, you have all of the facts. No one else has spoke about Bruce Orr before you did. Sarah Carter is better than any special counsel could be in this case. The American people have to listen to these facts. You started these stories and you're following through. This is vitally important. How could it have happened? It's an abomination. This is the FISA court, the most secret court in the country.
A fraud was committed on the court.
Absolutely dangerous.
But
Every American citizen is in danger.
I don't even think you could get me out of jail. All right, thank you. A close confidant of the Clintons agrees with me on most of this. We'll tell you about that. And Henry, an explosive report involving a prominent Democrat, allegations of abuse. Then find out which member of the Detroit Trump media is the latest to freak out over Peter Strzok's firing. We've got that, and Jesse and Jessica, and so much more.